Think we're live, are we? Oh, we're live now.
Yeah. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining in for this session for the Metaverse Summit. First of all, my thanks to the GDA group for organizing this. I think yesterday they had a lot of very interesting panels around Metaverse, on gaming, NFTs, around acquisition of virtual land and all of that. I think today we're going to really discuss about how traditional investors really look at metaverse, and what is the level of opportunities it presents from an investment perspective, and also how can one build a portfolio around metaverse. So I'll be moderating this session. I have with me Yong Kim, Raoul, and we have one guest who should also be joining, Smiyet from Visa. So before I kind of also introduce and give a big bit of background about myself, maybe I'll let me invite Raoul to share a few things about himself, and maybe then with Yong can come in.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chetan. So my name is Raoul. I've been on other panels before as well, when we talked about digital assets and other crypto topics. So I'm very happy to be here today about the newest trend, the newest topic of today, Metaverse. So I'm the CEO of Elitium. We built wealth management solutions for high net worth individuals. Besides that, I'm one of the co-founders of NFT Basel, which is a company where we focus on NFT exhibitions worldwide, and we created our own boutique NFT marketplace, focusing on physical and digital art. So very much involved in the NFT space. We also opened an office, no, sorry, not an office, but virtual gallery, NFT Basel virtual gallery in Decentraland last year, and we're also planning to open an office with Elitium in the Metaverse. And also this year, I'm launching my own Metaverse luxury company as well. So I'm very, very excited about this topic because I'm very much involved in the space. There are a lot of opportunities for early adapters like myself, like yourself, for the listeners, for investors, for everybody that's like interested in this new space. So yeah, very excited about the questions from today and to talk about this topic. Should we go to Yong Kim?
Hi. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Yong Kim. I am a managing partner at Singapore-based venture capital and private equity company called Tembusu Partners. We're primarily a IT technology, deep tech focused venture capital firm, and since about 2019, our portfolios have been increasingly reflecting, developments in the blockchain world, and obviously more recently, we're taking a real serious look into the metaverse from the perspective of what I would characterize ourselves as traditional technology-focused venture capital firm. We invest both in private as well as public markets, and later on, if at the appropriate moment, I would like to share, some of our journey of how we transitioned from traditional deep tech, and how we sort of, you could argue, inadvertently, slowly got a more and more exposure into metaverse-related investment themes. So with that, I guess I can pass the mic to Smiyet, who's just joined us.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Smiyet. I am actually part of the Visa team. I lead the Visa Ventures and Investments in the CEMEA region, which is basically Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Visa, obviously, everybody knows, is one of the leading payments companies. but obviously has been paying attention to what's happening in the blockchain, and we've been focusing on that for the last 2 to 3 years. Obviously, as initially as an interest in understanding how it could disrupt the payment industry, but more and so going into other aspects of the blockchain ecosystem. As people may have seen, Visa has acquired an NFT end of last year, and we are experimenting, let's say, also around digital art, NFTs, and Metaverse. Again, from more a perspective of how exchange of value could happen in the Metaverse, but also more broadly as other use cases may emerge and developed in that space. So I guess we're not the only largest corporate that is looking at this. People have seen the Microsoft acquisition recently, and others are playing in this space. So definitely something of interest, and paying attention to that.
Thank you, Smiyet. Chetan, you're here, right? Is he here, still here? Or did he leave? I don't see him anymore. Then I think I will take over, guys. So, Smiyet, I think you just made a very good point. So, Chetan wanted to talk about investor opportunities, right? For what should investors look at? What are the opportunities? What are the risks? Like in general, it's not just like corporates making moves. Obviously, also hedge funds are looking to start allocating more funds into crypto. You saw like BlackRock last week; they announced that they start accepting crypto trading. So, what is your thought on that? Like, do you think Metaverse will start to become one of the focuses for like corporates and hedge funds, or will it take a lot more time before we start to see that as well?
I think, like any new disruptive technology, there would be, let's say, a curve of adoption, including at the corporate level and the hedge fund. Maybe the financial investors will be, as we've seen in other spaces, the first one coming in, because they're coming in purely from a financial return perspective. And corporates or strategics have the additional layer of trying to link it back to their core business, which obviously makes it a little bit more complex, and they need to navigate that and build the use cases and the business models that make sense for them. So, for instance, purely speaking, like if we're talking about payments, payments at the Metaverse is still, let's say, nascent. Let's see how some of the use cases in the blockchain will transfer to the Metaverse per se. Sorry, but definitely, I think there is that. So financial investors will definitely be the first one to adopt, and naturally, from a strategic investor perspective, definitely, those that have the natural fit within the Metaverse will start first. So Microsoft, no brainer. Some of the software companies, fashion brands, etc., that fits more naturally in the Metaverse will be obviously always the first movers into the space before you can see others coming in.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yong Kim, you just mentioned something about your journey. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. Our prior to 2019, our focus on startups and venture capital was heavily based on what we would call deep tech focus. But as we took a deep dive and into a blockchain, we actually have a second blockchain fund right now. It's a modest size, but it helps us learn about the space, and particularly we try to get exposure to interesting ideas in the blockchain space, including obviously Metaverse and NFTs, and also that involves no surprise games and esports also in Asia, because as you may know, Korea, China, Japan actually form very strong gaming esports ecosystem in the global space. So obviously we're interested to find more of these ideas at an early stage, and it seems that particularly gaming and esports lend themselves very naturally to make a transition into the metaverse and make their presence known in the metaverse. And it's also an easy transition for traditional investors to get exposure to the metaverse, because investors do understand how games work and how esports works. So using that as a bridge to make that shift into the metaverse is actually quite handy, and it helped us to again, it's not just the games, but we like all the what we call the infrastructure, the roads and pipes that go into building the metaverse. We try very hard. We spend a lot of time looking into companies that are involved in things like graphics processing for the metaverse, cloud architecture for the metaverse. We like people who are applying even things like AI and neural networks to and into the interface aspects of the metaverse, because I think that the many traditional investors don't realize, or they're slowly realizing, that we're in the early days of the metaverse, and to make this even better, it requires tremendous computational power. Actually, it's a very, very heavy duty application from a computational perspective, and I think actually that makes things very, very interesting for us from that perspective, from the infrastructure side. So that's more or less how we got into it, through the I guess you could call the side door, through games and through esports, and now we find ourselves trying to understand how not only younger companies but also established companies like Microsoft or Intel, companies like Unity, of course, it goes without saying, are enabling people to populate the metaverse and really, really roll out the vision that people have for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're making a really good point about the whole gaming and esports aspect, because if I tell my friends, for example, about the metaverse, and I show them, for example, Decentraland, they're like, well, that's like Sims, right? Or that's like Habba Hotel. Like we know that from a game from 10 years ago. So they don't really understand why this could be the next big thing. But and then we can talk about purchasing land, and there's obviously the great opportunity and like merging the physical and the virtual world. And I'm a big fan of it, but at the same time, for a lot of people, it's very hard for them to understand. But from a gamer, that's seeing a lot of recognition, right? Virtual worlds have been there for more than a decade, for more than 2 decades, maybe. So looking at from not from a personal perspective, but from an investor perspective, looking at the business model of a gaming company, the blockchain technology is perfect, right? So you have the metaverse technology, but then you have NFTs, which are now connected to gaming, right? So for upgrades, for in-game features, and so on and so on. So looking at the lifetime value of a customer in a game, they have to pay an upfront fee, which is like between $50 and $100. And then you have all these upgrades within the game itself connected to NFTs. So the monetization model and the use case for gaming in the metaverse is just one, like there's a match. And then in my opinion, for the rest of the metaverse, where we talk about land and we talk about creating experiences, now I'm involved in Fashion Week in the Decentraland, right? So we're actually turning the Fashion Week physical into a virtual experience. So that's very new for people. We need to educate them. This will take years and years, in my opinion, before people start to understand the value of that. So we're not early, we're very early. But for gaming, I believe that the synergies are there, the use cases are there, and this is why Microsoft just did a multi-billion-dollar deal. PlayStation just acquired another company for $20 billion. So gaming right now is where the value is. But long term, where I see the value for investors as well is obviously, when metaverses started to grow and mass adoption starts taking place. And then at one point, what is Facebook gonna do, right? I mean, Facebook acquired WhatsApp to become the biggest messenger platform. They acquired Instagram to become the biggest, social media platform. Are they going to acquire whatever, a Decentraland, a Sandbox, Earth 2, or whatever metaverse out there? That's one of the questions as well. What are the big players going to do at one point?
Yeah, actually, I think you're quite on point, and that when many years ago, you recall that Facebook bought Oculus, right, for AR, VR, and I thought, wow, these guys are going to kick off this space, but then nothing came out, and which was a bit surprising to me. And now I think. From my perspective, I think what I'm really curious about to see what the next move is from the big players is actually what is Apple going to do because they seem to have this knack of waiting for how the kids in the neighborhood fight it out, and then they come in and then swoop up the market.
Absolutely, I think that's a good point. Yeah.
I think you're raising a very good point, Yong, here. I mean, in terms of Oculus, for instance, we talked about the infrastructure. We talked about the processing and the graphic and all that stuff. We talked about the IP, which is the games and the content that will come. But I think one element that you raised with that example is the hardware, and I think Apple could be definitely eyeing for that, right? Because to enhance the experience in the metaverse, the hardware as well needs to follow. And all of us have now a phone in our pockets, and could that phone be our gateway or a window to our metaverse in the best way? I think that's maybe again just speculation from my side, but that's I think some of these players that have those capabilities can come in and really push the experience in the metaverse to the next level.
Yeah, no, I completely. And what was interesting is that I was on a conversation recently with very early stage computer graphics company out of California. Because that's what we do. I mean, we like to look at really early stage stuff around the world. And the conversation was that they had just come out of a industry conference hosted by Apple, and what was interesting is there was a suggestion that the whole, just like 2007, Steve Jobs proposed in his introduction of the first iPhone, of mixing the computer and the mobile phone and the camera into one hand, and people thought, oh wow, that's weird, right? But now we take it for granted, right? So the conversation I had with this particular super early stage graphics company was that they're going to move. Wouldn't be surprised if Apple moves the entire communication experience into the metaverse and meld it with the metaverse.
Well, I think that can happen fast, or that can happen at one point. But at the same time, what I also sometimes realize is that we are surrounded with, fellow entrepreneurs, we're fellow, tech enthusiasts. But at the same time, when I speak to my mom about the metaverse, she thinks I'm crazy, right? She doesn't even know, like it took me already years to let her understand what crypto is. And now I'm talking about a virtual world where you can purchase things, you can experience events, so at one point I would say yes, but at the same time I would say maybe we are very ahead from the game, and now there is a lot of FOMO in the corporate world, and they all don't want to miss the boat. So that's why they're acquiring companies, they're starting their own metaverses, they're they want to do something that at least their name is attached to this keyword, the metaverse. But
Mhm.
I have the feeling at the same time, and maybe Apple is going to be the surprise, but I'm not sure, because at the same time, nobody knows really where this is going to go, in my opinion, because it is all so new for everyone. Like 6 months ago, nobody was talking about the metaverse, right? Like only like maybe a few people, right? Like people were building stuff, and but it was definitely not every day in the news like it is today. And I kind of have the feeling that we're in a time that people really want, and they believe this is the future. We also understand where everything becomes more digital, everything becomes more integrated with each other. But there has to be, like, maybe it's Apple, maybe it's another company, but there will be at one point one thought leader saying, okay, this is how we can merge it all, and this is how a real experience can look like. But at the moment, I have the feeling that everybody is just trying to work itself around and find a way to make a move, but not really like a decent strategy yet.
Yeah.
Sorry, sorry.
Go ahead, Chetan.
No, sorry. I think I was thrown to some other metaverse, so I was. I'm not sure, what you guys were discussing, but I think from a investor standpoint, and I hear you, Rahul, in terms of it's just so much of FOMO out there in terms of people trying to add any project and add some metaverse and NFT to it, and raise money out of it, right? So as investors, who are still very traditional, who are still buying real estate and physical land, and when you talk of virtual land, right? So maybe if Yong, you want to come in on this whole acquisition of physical versus virtual land, and how do you see it? So today, if someone wants to allocate to real estate, and you want to discuss with him, or give him a proposition around why you should buy real estate in the virtual world, what would you say?
Yes. Raoul made a very, very important point about FOMO, right? And one of the biggest pieces of news recently here in Korea was our largest company, Samsung Electronics. They went into Decentraland and just bought up a huge chunks of land inside Decentraland. And what they wanted to do was, so I asked my contacts at Samsung, are you guys doing this out of FOMO? And they said, no. This is called the preemptive strike. We just want to grab the land before somebody else takes the space up from our branch for our virtual metaverse, shops.
Yeah.
So
And
I thought that was quite an interesting move. Yeah.
I
and
think
it sounds
no, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, maybe just to add on that, and it sounds to me that it was exactly the same behavior when internet was just started and everybody was trying to grab the coolest domains, right? And everybody was like going and buying all the .com names that sounded cool to grab it and then monetize it later. And I think there is some similarity and analogy between land in the metaverse versus domain name, because ultimately that's what drives the traffic. And I think that's I think just an analogy to compare of to what happened
No,
in Web 2.
absolutely. And I think that going back to Chetan's question, the and I consider myself a traditional IT investor, okay, transitioning, and the way we are doing this is instead of jumping into the rabbit hole in one go, what we are doing is taking it in stages. So first question we ask ourselves is, okay, what are the players that we know that are making measured and actually to a large extent infrastructure contributions and moves into the metaverse. So so then it's a no-brainer. We're thinking about companies like Nvidia, right? We're talking about companies like Microsoft, Intel, and having said that, because we also ask ourselves, if we look at the fire in the hair, startups, right? Real cutting edge. What are the risks? And you might actually find it bizarre, but it's not just the traditional risk questions about data security and privacy concerns. But in our internal discussions, we try to figure out, what's the potential risk in terms of consumer sentiment, that people may not get used to the concepts of the metaverse, or they move on to something else, if they get bored. So that's also for us a risk point in terms of is this a legit trend rather than a fad investment for us? We take some really hard looks at these things. I hope that answers your question, Chetan.
Yeah. So that Smiyet, you look at investments, at Visa. So one of the key elements, around decision making is also the valuation. Now, how do you really value, especially in metaverse where you have say established players like Decentraland, Sandbox, and then there are new emerging, right? So how do you really value when someone is looking at, say, buying real estate or investing in NFTs? What kind of parameters you believe that investors should look at?
I think probably Yong is better positioned to answer that question than than me, but I'm happy to give some pointers to the answer. I mean, obviously, like any speculative technology, you're not going to be able to do it in a more traditional way where you have like projections and cash flows and a lot of metrics and comparables that you can go and compare yourself to. But obviously, you need to triangulate to come down to that valuation, and you need ultimately starting from more like a what is the utility value? And people will take different perspectives. Some of them, like Samsung as an example, for them were just a land grab, and they wanted maybe to have like their own presence in the metaverse, and they will look at it more from like a marketing brand perspective. And compare it to a traditional campaign that you're going to do on TV. Well, and size it from that perspective. Some other will be more looking at it from potential, again, addressable markets and trying to forecast what it's going to mean in terms of from financial perspective. So I think those will be, I think, some of the considerations and how you can triangulate to come down to some form of valuation. And ultimately, like any investor, at some point you're a price taker. There is a price in the market, and you have to decide whether you're willing to pay for it or not.
Yeah, can I add something interesting here? So I would like to advise everyone that's interested in the metaverse to just create an account on Decentraland, for example, and just walk around. And what you will see, surprisingly, is that you will not see too many people. Like you'll maybe see 50 people, 100 people, 150 people max walking around there. Why I'm saying this is that, so from a traffic perspective, although they're growing with hundreds of thousands of users per month, I know that for a fact, so it's growing fast. Not too many people are actually using it yet, as of yet, and going there. And so the main question then is, okay, will this ever happen? Will there be like thousands or millions of people at the same time walking around in the metaverse like Decentraland? Is that the case? Or will it be, no, we need to, like, so coming to your question, Chetan, like from a real estate perspective or from a metaverse experience perspective, or will there be a situation where you can create your own metaverse or your own metaverse experience, and you use the social media and your database and your whatever tools to get traffic to your metaverse experience. So it doesn't really matter then, like based on the traffic from people that are actually walking around there, but it's more based on the functionalities that this metaverse has to offer. So then you can start comparing features. You can start comparing compatibility. You can start to compare, like, okay, scalability and all these other factors. Besides the fact that it's not just based on, okay, people are now buying it because of FOMO, people buying because it's the number one. No, what is the future of this metaverse going to look like? Is it scalable? Is it future proof? I think that's one of the main factors where you as an investor have to look at.
No, and also, from an investor standpoint, it's not only, just from an investment perspective, but when you look at a variety of investors, these also include, brands, FMCG companies, or, various fashion companies. So for them, obviously, we've seen so much of action around a lot of companies already announcing or registering their digital marks on the metaverse. So what is really driving their decision making, or if Raoul, you or Yong, if you've been in discussions with, say, these brands, what is their trigger? I mean, you gave some example of Samsung, but for say brands to create that identity, what is really driving that?
In my opinion, from the conversation that I'm having with several brands, from fashion brands, luxury brands, tech brands, people are still exploring, but everybody feels and thinks this is the new social media, right? So, and how I personally see it, it is basically an extension of our, the physical world experience that we have, where we are limited because we're only here in 3D, and we just see what we can see, what we can create. But basically, in the metaverse, you can create an extension of your creativity and things. Like you want to showcase art, you want to showcase a certain experience. You want to, whatever, flying cars or how future products can look like. You can use the metaverse to showcase these experiences, and have this very new way of presenting products, events, products, whatever. So I think it can be an extension to social media. A lot of companies are looking into it, but they don't know how, when, where, what. So then again, which metaverse has the best possibilities in terms of features and graphics and so on? Of course, there's some, there's a few now that are the bigger ones. So obviously, the bigger brands always go for the top ones. But I think people are still exploring a lot, and this is with the phase we're in. Nobody really has, like, this is the main strategy we're focusing on. Everybody's just trying to do something. And besides gaming, which we talked about before when you were off for a second, I think people still are looking for the right use cases. And this gives the opportunity for everyone, right? It's equal. Everybody can
Right,
do something great here.
right.
What's
You
your
know,
opinion on this, Young Kim?
Yeah, I think if when I talk to some of the, say, the bigger brands, a common theme that I seem to hear is that yes, it's early days. They know that, but also from a marketing perspective, um, they see this as uh, an additional, delivery channel for their brand message, and uh, and the reason that they feel that they need to be, sort of open-minded about these things is because the arrival of and the success of media such as Instagram and TikTok has completely upended how media buying and brand delivery seems to work, particularly with certain segments of the consumer markets. Uh, so yes, Raoul, you're right. This is an experiment. I agree with that. But they feel that the risk is too high not to be part of it. They need to internalize how these new channels work. And I mean, frankly speaking, many tell me that one of the big shockers, in recent years in traditional advertising or brand marketing is what they call, it's not push, but pull, um, content, through things like primarily TikTok and Instagram, which is to a large extent beyond the control of traditional, mega, advertising marketing, operations.
Right. Sometime back, Yong, you mentioned about taking exposure to the space via, some listed stocks, right? You mentioned about Nvidia or Meta or, Apple.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, that's a very important point in terms of, investors, looking at the space and, wanting to invest in the future. But today, they are not really aware of, how to go about it. So one is, of course, to the listed space, but are there
Mm-hmm.
any other kind of avenues you believe, or the panel believes that they should start dipping their feet in and get some exposure to this space?
Yeah, I think obviously because I'm in the VC space, we go into the private markets early, but for the super traditional investors or investors who just want to begin the learning curve, the journey into the metaverse, nowadays we have this fantastic easy to get in, easy to get out instrument. It's called an ETF, right? And one by the way, I'm not endorsing this, but I'm just using this as an example. But one ETF product specifically tailored for the metaverse is called Roundhill Ball Metaverse ETF, and it's publicly traded. You can look it up, and so you want to get into the metaverse exposure, but you don't want to go into specific stock picking. Then dipping your toes in an ETF is probably one of the easiest ways to do this. And obviously because putting money into a metaverse venture capital fund is obviously not easy for everyone in the market, right?
Right.
So, but for the investor community at large, we're beginning to see more and more metaverse focused, and I think we'll pretty soon see NFT focused ETF products also that are professionally managed. So I think those are probably what I would call easy ways to get experience into the market.
Right.
If you don't want to do your own
Sure.
selection.
Sure. Smiyet, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I mean, I will only add to that. I mean, there is a novel and very innovative way also of investing, which is came out from the blockchain or Web3 innovation, which are the DAOs, and there are some interesting plays around NFTs and metaverse in that space, which is I think a good way to get diversified exposure to the space with communities within a community that is let's say shaping that portfolio. So that's also I think that's the element that I will add to what Yong mentioned.
Right.
That's a very good point. In fact, I forgot to mention that our blockchain fund actually also has exposure to a number of DAOs, and also straddling the gaming space. This idea of guilds, right? Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Right. No, I think from a investor standpoint, it is very important, especially traditional investors, is that what we've seen over last 2-3 years is that digital assets is really going mainstream and is becoming an asset class in itself, and therefore it's important that as large family offices who look at from an asset allocation perspective, it's very important that they kind of look at it from overall asset allocation and whether it makes sense to at least start somewhere, right? I mean, I don't think that given the momentum which Web3 has gained over last 2-3 years, it makes sense to just sit out. I guess you have to start somewhere. That's my view, and at least start with some allocation to that space,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course try to broad base the portfolio. Either through the listed way or through the ETF way, or investing with few VC funds who are just focused on blockchain, on crypto, or a specific metaverse strategy. And I think it's very early days. I think the opportunity is huge, and you don't want to miss out on that. So I think it's worth taking that risk and starting somewhere.
Yeah, I think again from our perspective, this reminds me of the time when in the early year 2000, when there was the .com boom, if you recall that, and so I think there is some commonality of investment approach, such as there used to be a saying in the .com boom that instead of if you're not sure, instead of investing in the the gold diggers. Invest in the companies that sell the jeans and the tools to the gold diggers. And I think there's some resonance to that, and I think I have to admit that in our funds, we try to stick to that, and we really focus on enablers, and infrastructure plays, and obviously we, because we come from a deep tech background in our investment selection, so we try to stick to really hardcore technology enablers that facilitate the metaverse.
Right.
Yeah, and I agree with that, because if you look at the trend or the different technologies that popped out of nothing in the past 5 years, right, from crypto and blockchain, and then obviously DeFi, NFTs, and now Metaverse projects. Only the ones that were focused on long-term solutions with real use cases and utilities to focus on specific niches and world-solving problems. These are the ones that are still there today, and these are the ones that will effectively play a long-term role in businesses or ecosystems and so on. And that's my main point regarding the metaverses as well. All the long-term projects that have specific niches and long-term use cases, either it's gaming, it's either going to be virtual reality combined with AR, or very specifically focused on either it's whatever event or immersive experiences, whatever. But yeah, from an investor perspective, I think again, looking back, like you could have invested into a JPEG cat or dog or ape, and you could have made a lot of money. But at the same time, we don't know where this is gonna, if that's still a valuable asset in a few years from now.
Yeah.
And I think that investors are looking for something that's still sustainable in 10, 15 years from now, and not just a hype. And I think that's very important for every investment you do in this industry. Who is the team behind it? What's the vision? What problems are they solving? What's the long-term plan? And yeah, again, this is going to be very important for all the projects that will be succeeding, or yes or no.
Yeah. No, I think we are running out of time. It's been a pleasure having all of you today, and thanks for sharing your thoughts. I'm sure traditional investors logging in today would have benefited from the thoughts and input shared by everyone. I think lastly, I just want to add that the whole metaverse is not about Meta. It is much beyond Meta, and in the sense Facebook. So we should really look at the space seriously. Start allocating some capital, learn more about the space, interact more with people from this industry, and I think it could be a good long-term bet from a pure investment standpoint. So thank you all, wonderful, and have a great day and have a great year ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.